you this afternoon to present my research progress with the title A Survey of Antimicrobial Resistance Profile of Mycoplasma mycoides isolates from Southern Africa, a case study of Tanzania. My name is Emily Peter Singano from Tanzania. I'm working for Tanzania Veterinary Laboratory Agency, Arusha Center. My supervisors for this study are Professor Anita Michael from the University of Pretoria, Dr. Katiuzia Zili from IZS Italy, Dr. Leroy Keokle from Bienville, Botswana, and Dr. Geoffrey Omach from TVLA, Tanzania. Next slide. Yeah, outline. I will start with the background and end up with acknowledgement. Next slide, please. Background. CBPP is caused by Mycoplasma mycoides, and the hosts of this disease are bovine and water buffaloes. The clinical signs, as you can see from this animal, I took this photo from the field, and this animal was suffering from CBPP. But when I visited this area, the animal was under tyrosine dose, and most of the clinical signs were masked by the tyrosine. As we can see, the animal is under the shade and its head lowered, and also there is nasal discharge, though we cannot see it very clearly. So these are the clinical signs of CBPP. Next slide. Yeah, control of this disease. Stamping out would be the control of the disease, but financial status of Tanzania made it a challenge. Therefore, in Tanzania, we are relying on vaccination with the T144 vaccine. Though this vaccine, it's a challenge also to farmers, especially those living in remote area, because in remote area there is no electricity, and this vaccine need a cold chain. So most of the farmers treating animal using antibiotics, and the treatment of CBPP by antibiotics is a standardized practice in Africa, though some studies say that treatment is contraindicated because it causes the animal to be a carrier and continue shedding the bacteria to other animals. Next slide, please. Yeah, so accessibility of these antibiotics through vet shops and other areas. For example, during my studies, I have seen people selling drugs in open markets, in some other places like milking, collecting places. So once the farmer takes the milk to sell, then there are people there selling antibiotics to farmers. So this availability of antibiotics without prescription encourages farmers to practice self-treatment, though it is discouraged by World Organization for Animal Health, because these farmers, they don't have experience or knowledge on treatment, so they misuse these antibiotics. Either they overdose, underdose, or they don't follow the withdrawal period. For example, the withdrawal period for tyrosine is 28 days, in tetracycline is 5 to 20 days. So no farmer can wait for 28 days without selling milk or drinking milk or selling his animal for slaughter. So yeah, as we can see from this photo also, this is the animal treated by antibiotics. So the antibiotics masks the clinical signs of the disease, and the farmer continue drinking milk from this animal or sell it for slaughter. So when we eat meat or milk from this animal, we get the resistance and we shed it from to the environment. And from the environment, other people or animal can get this resistance. Other slide. Next slide. Yeah, this is the current situation of CBPP in Tanzania. As we can see, these red dots are the area reported to have CBPP, but these are only the reports from the clinical cases in the field and from abattoir reports. So for example, from January to May this year, 720 samples sent to the central laboratory, and through C. ELISA, 120 samples were positive while 600 were negative. This is only 16.6%. But through, let's say maybe these animals are in this southern part of Tanzania, and through uncontrolled cattle movement, these animals within 6 months or 1 year, they can move from the southern part to the northern part. So can you imagine how many cattle will be infected from these 120 animals? So through this, IFAN in collaboration with IZS, TVLA, and BNVL decided to sponsor this research. Next slide, please. Yeah, aim of this study is to determine the antibiotic susceptibility and resistance profile of Mycoplasma mycoides, and the objectives of the study is to ascertain the antibiotics commonly used to treat CBPP in the targeted area and to isolate MMM from clinical affected animals and to perform minimum inventory concentration test. Next slide. Yeah, the rationale of this study, the study was anticipated to generate baseline data that will help to curb antibiotic resistance problem in Tanzania, and also is the part of my master's study. Next slide. Yeah, so research question. Every research has its questions. So we for our studies we have these two questions. First, we wanted to know what are the commonly used antibiotics to treat CBPP in the research area. And second, we wanted to know what is the relationship between farmers' management practices and the development of antibiotic resistance. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is our study area. From this study, we have 5 regions: Tanga, Dar es Salaam, Pwani, Morogoro, and Iringa. And from each region, we have selected 2 districts, and from these 2 districts, we have selected 2 wards. And why? Because as we can see from this small map here, this area is the area where CBPP is reported. And also the area is nearby the central lab where we can collect sample and transport them to the laboratory within 28 hours. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is the study design and the data collection tools or the interview guide. Up to now, we have already collected information from all participants, which is 100%. And also, we have already collected 348 samples. Yeah, our samples are lung, pleural fluid, lymph nodes, nasal discharge, and nasal swabs from affected animals. And the lab work will be done in CVL, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, while culture and isolation In the RFLP PCR, the protocols are adopted from the BNVL, and MIC test will be conducted in Teramo. Next slide. Yeah, these are some photos I took from the field work during the interviews. Next slide. Yeah, here we can see how these farmers storing antibiotics in their house. And they have, for example, this Maasai woman here. This is her bag for storing antibiotics, and she has this needle ready for injecting animal at any time when the animal are sick. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is another photo. Here is the water trough, and these cattle from different villages, like 10 villages, they drink in the same water trough. At the same time, human, they fetch water from the same water trough. So let's say maybe there is this animal carries a resistant bacteria. So it means that all these people will be at risk. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is abattoir work, and these are some suspected cases of CBPP. Next slide. Yeah, results. I have these are some of the results. As we can see, tylosin is the most used antibiotics, followed by oxytetracycline and enrofloxacin. Next slide. As we can see from this slide, few farmers has a knowledge on management, and most of them experience this CBPP, and few of them they sent samples to the laboratory without they sent samples to the laboratory, and most of them they use antibiotic on treating CBPP. Next slide. This slide shows that like 34% of farmers, they practice self-treatment, and a few of them depend on vets, and most of farmers, they depend on other personnel like friends, neighbors, and other people. Next slide. Yeah, this slide shows most of cattle, they stay in the same house or the same compound, and they graze together and mix with other herds in grazing area. So if there is any disease from one animal, it's easy to transfer it to other animals. Next slide. Yeah, in discussion, the results confirm the use of antimicrobials amongst cattle keepers, and microlide is the most group of antimicrobials used, followed by oxytetracycline and enrofloxacin. Also, the study confirms that farmers have experienced this CBPP, and most of them use antibiotics without sending sample to the laboratory. Also, the study confirmed that some cattle keepers practice self-treatment to cattle, and or use other personnel without considering their professionals. Only a few percent are using veterinarians. Therefore, the ongoing work will assess if the use of these antimicrobials leads to any antimicrobial resistance in the Mycoplasma mycoides strain isolated. Next slide. Yeah, this study is sponsored by EFAN and the University of Pretoria is where I study, and also the TVLOA laboratory is where I'll do my lab work together with BNVL and the IZS laboratories. Next slide. Thank you.